have you ever wondered why some people seem to succeed quietly while others constantly share every step of their journey? What if I told you that some of your greatest breakthroughs are meant to be private, kept safe, nurtured, and guarded? Today, I'm going to share 7 powerful secrets you should keep private and how doing this can change your life, your faith, and your future. There is an almost counterintuitive power in silence that most people underestimate. We live in a culture that encourages constant sharing, constant posting, constant talking. From social media updates to group chats, from casual conversations to boardroom meetings, it often feels like if you're not saying something, you're missing out. Yet, some of the most powerful people you will ever meet have learned the art of silence. They understand that keeping certain things private is not a weakness, but a strategic move that amplifies influence, preserves energy, and deepens faith. Silence is not about withholding for selfish reasons. Silence is a discipline, a deliberate choice to protect your growth, your vision, and your spirit. When you choose to remain silent at the right times, you are allowing space for reflection, for preparation, and for God to move without interference. There's a story in Scripture that illustrates this perfectly. In the book of Esther, Esther is a young woman who is suddenly thrust into a position of power as Queen of Persia. The king doesn't know she is Jewish, and her people are in danger of annihilation. Esther could have rushed in, revealed everything, and tried to solve the problem on her own. But she chose silence. She fasted and prayed for 3 days before speaking, and she carefully considered her words. That period of quiet reflection allowed her to approach the king with wisdom, courage, and timing that ultimately saved her people. The power of her silence was not passive, it was strategic, prayerful, and intentional. This is the principle that applies to your life today. Not every detail of your story is meant to be shared immediately. Some things need to be incubated in silence until the timing is perfect. In a practical sense, silence protects your energy. Every time you share a thought, a dream, or a struggle prematurely, you invite feedback, opinions, and sometimes even criticism that can derail your focus. Even well-meaning advice can distract you from the path God has set before you. There is an emotional cost to speaking too much too soon. People might question your motives, judge your readiness, or offer solutions you are not prepared to hear. But when you practice silence, you preserve your energy, keep your vision pure, and allow your ideas to develop fully before exposing them to the world. You create a sacred space where your thoughts can mature and your plans can unfold naturally. Silence also strengthens your faith. When you keep certain things private, you are forced to rely more on God than on human validation. There is a temptation in every believer's heart to seek affirmation from others, to broadcast progress, to prove that God is at work. But God's timing is perfect, and sometimes He wants you to walk in faith quietly. When no one else is watching, when no one else can comment or criticize, your trust in God becomes more authentic. You learn to hear His voice more clearly without the noise of public opinion. And that kind of faith, cultivated in silence, is resilient. It can withstand setbacks, criticism, and pressure because it is rooted in something deeper than approval. It is rooted in the presence of God. Another aspect of the power of silence is protection. There are ideas, gifts, and blessings that are incredibly delicate in their early stages. When you share too soon, they can be misunderstood, misused, or even stolen. History is filled with examples of brilliant ideas that were leaked prematurely, only to be distorted or exploited. Think about entrepreneurs who reveal their startup plans before they are ready. Think about artists who share unfinished work only to have critics judge them before the vision is fully formed. The same principle applies to spiritual and personal breakthroughs. Some prayers, dreams, and assignments are meant to be nurtured quietly under God's guidance until they are mature enough to withstand public exposure. Silence is a protective barrier that ensures your ideas and spiritual insights reach their full potential without interference. Silence also teaches humility. It reminds us that not everything we do is for public recognition. Some achievements, victories, and breakthroughs are meant to glorify God without drawing attention to ourselves. There is a profound spiritual discipline in learning to celebrate privately, to rejoice quietly, and to keep your testimony sacred. When we are silent about certain victories, we avoid the trap of pride, comparison, and self-promotion. Instead, we cultivate a posture of gratitude and humility, recognizing that what we have is not solely the product of our own effort, but a gift from God. This humility becomes a magnet for God's continued blessing because it aligns our hearts with His purposes rather than seeking human approval. The power of silence is also relational. It allows you to listen more than you speak. Some of the greatest leaders in history were known for their ability to remain silent and listen carefully. They understood that by listening, they gained insight, discernment, and wisdom that talking alone could never provide. When you practice silence in your relationships, you create space for understanding, empathy, and meaningful connection. People sense when you are listening genuinely, and that deepens trust and influence. Silence can prevent unnecessary conflict because it gives you time to respond thoughtfully rather than reacting impulsively. In other words, silence is not the absence of action, it is the presence of wisdom in action. Craig Groeschel often emphasizes the principle of strategic patience, and this ties directly into the power of silence. God's timing is rarely instantaneous. He often wants you to develop, prepare, and mature in the quiet before unleashing the visible results. Silence is a form of strategic patience. It is a deliberate withholding of information, a disciplined waiting, and a trust that God's timing is always better than your timing. When you are silent at the right moments, you are actually participating in God's plan, allowing Him to orchestrate outcomes that are beyond your human imagination. Many people rush to speak, rush to act, and in doing so, they short-circuit God's plan. But the person who masters the art of silence walks with purpose, with intention, and with a deep reliance on divine guidance. In practical application, the power of silence can manifest in several ways. You might choose to keep certain dreams private until you have made substantial progress. You might decide to refrain from sharing your struggles with everyone, instead seeking God and a few trusted confidants for support. You might resist the urge to comment on every situation or to give your opinion on every matter. This disciplined silence doesn't make you weak, it makes you intentional. Every word you speak carries weight because it is chosen carefully and aligned with purpose. Your silence becomes a signal of discernment, maturity, and spiritual depth. People will notice that you do not speak frivolously, and over time, your words will carry greater authority and influence. There is also an element of mystery in silence. When you keep certain things private, you create space for curiosity, respect, and anticipation. People are drawn to individuals who possess depth, who are not easily understood, and who operate from a place of intentionality. This is not about manipulation, it is about integrity and prudence. Some secrets are sacred because they are God-given. Revealing them prematurely can dilute their power, but keeping them private allows them to blossom at the perfect time. Finally, the power of silence is an invitation to internal reflection. In our noisy world, silence is rare. It gives you the opportunity to check your motives, clarify your vision, and hear God's voice more clearly. In the quiet, you can process your emotions, evaluate your intentions, and refine your character. You learn to distinguish between what is urgent and what is important. You gain the wisdom to know when to speak, when to act, and when to wait. This kind of intentional living is transformative because it aligns your heart, mind, and actions with God's will. Silence, therefore, is not simply an absence of noise. It is a dynamic, powerful, and strategic tool. It protects your energy, strengthens your faith, nurtures humility, enhances relationships, and invites divine guidance. Mastering the power of silence is one of the most profound lessons you can learn in life. It is a secret that, once embraced, transforms how you think, how you act, and how you influence the world around you. Like Esther in the palace, you may find that the quiet moments you invest today will yield the most extraordinary outcomes tomorrow. The person who understands when to speak and when to remain silent operates from a place of wisdom, not impulsivity. They preserve their gifts, protect their vision, and allow God to work in ways that cannot be rushed or forced. Silence is the hidden strength behind success, the invisible armor of faith, and the secret channel through which God moves powerfully in your life. One of the most overlooked yet critical principles in life and leadership is the necessity of protecting your vision. Every person has been given a unique calling, a distinct purpose, and a set of dreams that are specific to them. These visions are sacred, not just goals or ambitions, but God-given directions that, when fulfilled, have the power to impact not only your life, but the lives of countless others. Yet the sad reality is that most people sabotage their own vision by exposing it too early, by listening too closely to the opinions of others, or by failing to protect it from the distractions and criticisms that inevitably come with ambition. Protecting your vision is about stewardship. It is understanding that your dreams are entrusted to you for a reason and treating them with the reverence, patience, and discernment they deserve. When we talk about vision, we are not talking merely about setting goals or having a plan. Vision is the blueprint of your future. It is the God-given idea that whispers to your heart, calling you towards something bigger than yourself. Vision often comes with a sense of excitement, but also with vulnerability. To protect your vision, you must first acknowledge its fragility in the early stages. When you are first forming an idea or stepping into a new calling, it is often delicate, sensitive, and incomplete. It is during this stage that external influences can have the greatest impact, sometimes in ways that are subtle and nearly invisible. That's why it is so important to treat your vision as sacred, to nurture it quietly, and to avoid exposing it to every voice or opinion that crosses your path. One of the first ways to protect your vision is through discernment. Not everyone around you has the same level of understanding or alignment with your calling. Friends, family, colleagues, and even well-intentioned mentors can sometimes misinterpret your dream, give advice based on fear, or project their own insecurities onto your life. When you share your vision indiscriminately, you open the door for confusion, discouragement, and even subtle sabotage. Protecting your vision requires the wisdom to identify who truly understands your purpose and who may unintentionally or intentionally derail it. It's not about isolation, it's about selectivity. You create a circle of trust, a group of advisors and supporters who see your dream as God sees it, who speak encouragement and guidance, not doubt and distraction. Timing is another essential element in protecting your vision. God's timing is always perfect, and often our natural inclination is to rush into exposure, to seek validation, or to broadcast our plans before they are fully formed. Yet history shows us countless examples of ideas shared prematurely, only to face criticism, misunderstanding, or failure because the world wasn't ready, or because the vision itself wasn't ready. Protecting your vision involves patience, knowing when to act and when to wait. It involves resisting the urge to announce your next steps on social media, at work, or even to well-meaning friends until you have a foundation strong enough to withstand scrutiny and opposition. Timing and preparation are inseparable from protection. Another reason to protect your vision is that people will sometimes respond to your dreams not with support, but with fear or envy. When you pursue something extraordinary, it can be threatening to others. They may question your abilities, dismiss your goals, or even try to discourage you. This doesn't mean they are malicious. It simply means that your vision represents something unfamiliar and untested, something that challenges the comfort zones of those around you. If you are constantly broadcasting your progress or sharing every step, you expose yourself to unnecessary judgment and pressure. Protecting your vision allows it to develop free from the weight of comparison, criticism, or the unrealistic expectations of others. Protecting your vision also involves creating boundaries. This is a discipline that many people overlook because they confuse sharing with progress. There is a difference between seeking wise counsel and seeking validation from everyone you encounter. Boundaries help you maintain focus, preserve energy, and protect the integrity of your calling. They allow you to say no to distractions, even well-intentioned opportunities that do not align with your ultimate purpose. Craig Groeschel often emphasizes that leadership requires intentionality, and protecting your vision is one of the most intentional acts you can practice. You are not hiding your dream out of fear. You are guarding it as a steward guards something of immense value. Spiritual protection is another dimension of keeping your vision safe. When God gives a vision, it is accompanied by spiritual significance. There are forces, sometimes unseen, that may attempt to derail it. And if your dream is exposed too early, it becomes vulnerable to discouragement, doubt, and attacks. Protecting your vision spiritually involves prayer, fasting, and relying on God's wisdom rather than solely human advice. It involves seeking divine clarity, asking for guidance, and remaining sensitive to the Spirit's timing. This spiritual stewardship ensures that your vision is aligned with God's purpose and that it has a foundation that no human opinion or circumstance can shake. One of the most common mistakes people make is equating exposure with validation. They feel that if others know about their dream, it becomes real. The truth is, a vision does not need an audience to be legitimate. It needs discipline, preparation, and perseverance. Some of the greatest achievements in history began in secrecy, in quiet diligence, and in persistent effort that no one else noticed at first. The act of protecting your vision is a form of faith. It demonstrates trust that God is orchestrating your steps and that the timing of revelation matters more than the timing of recognition. Another critical aspect of protecting your vision is clarity. When your vision is new, it is often raw and incomplete. Sharing it prematurely can lead to misinterpretation or dilution. Protecting your vision gives you the space to refine it, to clarify your purpose, and to ensure that when it is revealed, it communicates exactly what God intended. This is why some of the most successful leaders, innovators, and change makers operate quietly for months or even years before publicly unveiling their work. They understand that clarity is power and that revealing an unclear vision can cause confusion or even failure. Protecting your vision also strengthens resilience. By keeping certain aspects private, you develop internal fortitude and reliance on God rather than constant external approval. Challenges and setbacks are inevitable, and when your vision is exposed prematurely, criticism can feel personal and discouraging. But when your vision is protected, nurtured, and held privately, you are less likely to be derailed by opposition or disappointment. You develop a strength that comes from conviction, from knowing that what you are pursuing is God-given, not dependent on the applause or validation of others. It is also important to recognize that protecting your vision requires courage. There is a temptation to share your ideas to gain recognition, to feel understood, or to receive affirmation. Yet courage is often expressed through restraint. It takes courage to keep a powerful idea in your heart while working diligently in the background. It takes courage to say no to premature exposure and to trust that God's timing is perfect. Courage in this context is not the absence of fear, but the ability to act faithfully despite fear. Protecting your vision is an act of courage because it often goes against the culture of immediacy and constant sharing that surrounds us. The act of protection also allows for focus. Every time you share your vision prematurely, you risk distraction. Questions, unsolicited advice, and even cynicism can pull you away from the work that God has called you to do. By keeping your vision guarded, you preserve mental clarity and emotional bandwidth. You can focus on what truly matters: preparation, skill development, relationship building, and spiritual alignment. In this way, protecting your vision is not just about hiding. It is about creating optimal conditions for success and ensuring that your efforts are concentrated on what will bear fruit. Finally, protecting your vision ensures that when the time comes for revelation, your impact will be maximal. Just as a carefully nurtured plant blooms at the right season, a well-protected vision reaches full maturity at the appointed time. People are more likely to respond positively, support your efforts, and participate in your success when the vision is clear, fully formed, and strategically revealed. The power of timing, clarity, and spiritual preparation cannot be overstated. Protecting your vision is a form of stewardship, faith, and strategic action that positions you for the greatest possible outcome. In conclusion, protecting your vision is about so much more than secrecy. It is about stewardship, discernment, patience, spiritual alignment, resilience, courage, focus, and strategic timing. It is about valuing what God has entrusted to you and treating it with the reverence it deserves. It is about understanding that not every eye needs to witness your journey immediately, and that some things are too powerful to expose before their time. By protecting your vision, you preserve its integrity, ensure its clarity, and maximize its impact. It is one of the most important disciplines for anyone who is serious about fulfilling their calling, achieving their God-given purpose, and making a lasting difference in the world. Self-control is one of the most essential yet most misunderstood disciplines in life. Many people view it as a restrictive practice, something that limits joy or creativity, or as an exercise in frustration. But in reality, self-control is one of the most powerful tools a person can develop to live a life of purpose, impact, and faithfulness. It is not about suppressing your desires out of fear or shame. It is about stewarding your thoughts, emotions, and actions so that they align with the higher calling God has placed on your life. The discipline of self-control is the bridge between who you are today and the person God is calling you to become. Without it, vision falters, relationships suffer, and potential goes unrealized. But with it, every area of your life, spiritual, emotional, professional, and relational, can flourish. Self-control begins with awareness. Before you can exercise restraint, you have to understand yourself. You have to recognize the triggers, the weaknesses, the areas where impulsivity or distraction tends to lead you astray. Craig Groeschel often talks about the importance of self-awareness in leadership and spiritual growth, and the same principle applies here. When you are aware of your tendencies, whether it's impatience, overcommitment, oversharing, indulgence, or anger, you gain the first measure of control over them. Awareness is the foundation, because without it, discipline is random and reactive rather than intentional and strategic. It is the difference between living under the sway of your impulses and living under the guidance of God's purpose. The discipline of self-control is deeply connected to patience. In a world that prizes instant gratification, learning to wait is countercultural, but profoundly powerful. Patience is a form of self-control because it requires you to resist the urge to act impulsively, to speak prematurely, or to demand immediate results. This is particularly relevant in the pursuit of your dreams and the fulfillment of your vision. It is tempting to rush, to seek shortcuts, or to broadcast your progress before the timing is right. Yet those who master self-control understand that timing is critical and that God's plans unfold in the right season. By exercising patience, you allow your goals, your relationships, and your spiritual growth to mature fully, ensuring that when action is taken, it is effective and lasting. Self-control is also about managing your emotions. Life is full of challenges, disappointments, and provocations that can easily lead to reactive behavior. Without self-control, anger, fear, and frustration can dictate your responses, often resulting in regret, broken relationships, and missed opportunities. Craig Groeschel frequently emphasizes emotional intelligence, and self-control is a cornerstone of it. It allows you to pause before reacting, to process your feelings in alignment with wisdom, and to respond with intention rather than impulsivity. Emotional self-control does not mean ignoring your feelings. It means acknowledging them, understanding them, and choosing how to act in a way that honors God and protects your vision. Another critical aspect of self-control is the stewardship of your words. Words have power. They can build or destroy, inspire or discourage, heal or wound. Without self-control, it is easy to speak prematurely, overshare, gossip, or say things in the heat of the moment that you later regret. Protecting your words through discipline is a form of integrity. It signals that you are intentional about what you communicate and that you understand the weight of influence your words carry. When self-control guides your speech, you not only protect relationships, but also preserve your reputation and authority. Speaking with intention reflects maturity, wisdom, and alignment with God's principles. Self-control also extends to your actions. Every decision you make, from how you spend your time to how you use your resources, requires discipline. Impulsive choices can derail progress, compromise values, and create unnecessary stress. The person who exercises self-control does not simply react to circumstances, they respond with strategic foresight. They prioritize actions that align with their long-term goals, with God's calling, and with the vision He has entrusted to them. In essence, self-control transforms ordinary decisions into powerful steps toward fulfilling purpose. A key dimension of the discipline of self-control is the restraint of desire. God-given dreams often come with deep longing, and while desire itself is not wrong, unchecked desire can lead to temptation, distraction, and compromise. Whether it's material gain, approval from others, recognition, or pleasure, desires left unmanaged can cloud judgment and redirect focus from God's plan. Self-control allows you to acknowledge your desires without being controlled by them. It creates space to weigh decisions against values, long-term goals, and spiritual alignment. Desire becomes a motivator when governed by self-control rather than a master that dictates your choices. Spiritual self-control is especially critical because it intersects with faith and character. Every trial, every challenge, and every opportunity to wait, resist, or endure is a chance to cultivate deeper reliance on God. The Bible often links self-control with wisdom and maturity, reminding us that it is a fruit of the Spirit, not merely a human effort. Craig Groeschel often points out that spiritual disciplines, prayer, fasting, study, and meditation are training grounds for self-control. These practices teach restraint, focus, and reliance on God rather than immediate gratification or human validation. Spiritual self-control is the backbone of integrity. It ensures that your choices honor God and remain aligned with the calling He has placed on your life. Self-control also protects relationships. Many conflicts arise not from differences in opinion, but from uncontrolled impulses, unfiltered words, or reactive behaviors. The person who exercises self-control creates space for understanding, listening, and empathy. They respond rather than react. They measure their words and actions, considering both the immediate impact and the long-term consequences. Self-control fosters trust because people recognize that your behavior is intentional, consistent, and guided by principle rather than emotion. It strengthens marriages, friendships, leadership roles, and community influence by modeling maturity and restraint. Furthermore, the discipline of self-control has compounding effects over time. Like a muscle, it strengthens with repeated practice. Each moment you choose restraint over impulsivity, patience over haste, wisdom over reaction, and alignment over indulgence, you build capacity for future challenges. Self-control becomes a habit that shapes your identity. It becomes less about forcing yourself to resist and more about living naturally in alignment with purpose. Over time, this disciplined life produces results that cannot be achieved through talent or ambition alone. It is the quiet, consistent power that shapes destiny. Another key component of self-control is the ability to delay gratification. Many people want the reward immediately without investing the necessary effort or waiting for the right season. But God's timing is perfect, and often the most meaningful rewards come after sustained discipline. Delayed gratification is not deprivation. It is a strategic choice to prioritize what is eternal over what is temporary, what is substantial over what is superficial, and what is aligned with purpose over what is convenient. This principle applies to finances, career growth, spiritual maturity, relationships, and personal health. Those who master delayed gratification through self-control position themselves for exponential impact. The discipline of self-control also requires humility. It reminds us that we are not the center of the universe and that our impulses, desires, and instincts must sometimes yield to greater wisdom and divine guidance. Humility allows us to acknowledge that restraint is not weakness, but strength, that saying no can be more powerful than saying yes, and that choosing patience over haste is often a more courageous act than immediate action. Self-control is an expression of self-mastery, and self-mastery begins with humility, the understanding that our lives are best lived when guided by principle, purpose, and divine wisdom rather than impulse. Self-control is ultimately a tool for freedom. It might seem paradoxical, but true freedom is not the ability to do whatever you want, whenever you want. True freedom is the ability to act with intention, to align choices with values, to resist harmful impulses, and to pursue what is lasting rather than fleeting. The person who masters self-control experiences freedom from regret, freedom from distraction, freedom from destructive habits, and freedom from the opinions and pressures of others. It is the liberation that comes when your heart, mind, and actions are all governed by principle and purpose rather than by the chaos of unrestrained impulses. In practice, cultivating self-control requires daily commitment. It is formed through small, consistent choices, speaking thoughtfully, prioritizing wisely, exercising patience, managing desires, and relying on God's guidance in every decision. Every moment of restraint is an investment in character and destiny. Craig Groeschel often emphasizes that spiritual growth and leadership development are not instantaneous. They are the product of disciplined habits that compound over time. Self-control is one of those habits that, when faithfully practiced, transforms ordinary lives into extraordinary ones, aligning your potential with your purpose. The discipline of self-control is the invisible engine behind every successful leader, every fulfilled calling, and every life of impact. It protects your vision, strengthens your relationships, nurtures faith, and creates space for God's purposes to unfold. It is not restrictive. It is empowering. It is not punishment. It is freedom. It is the deliberate, daily practice of aligning your impulses, emotions, and desires with your highest calling, knowing that every act of restraint today shapes the legacy of tomorrow. Confidentiality is one of those qualities that is often overlooked in our loud and constantly connected world, yet it carries tremendous power. In a society that celebrates oversharing, broadcasting every thought, and turning personal triumphs or struggles into public content, confidentiality feels almost countercultural. Yet it is precisely in this sacred practice of keeping certain things private that life, faith, and vision are protected, strengthened, and elevated. The blessing of confidentiality is more than just silence. It is a spiritual and relational discipline that cultivates trust, preserves integrity, and allows God to operate powerfully in your life. To understand the blessing of confidentiality, we must first recognize that not all victories, struggles, or spiritual revelations are meant for public consumption. Some things are sacred because they carry potential that is too great to be diluted by premature exposure. The Bible is full of examples where God intentionally kept plans, promises, and instructions hidden until the proper time. Joseph, for instance, had dreams that revealed God's favor and his destiny, but he kept them private when necessary and revealed them strategically at the right moment. If Joseph had shared his dreams recklessly, he might have been ridiculed or even targeted earlier than God intended. The same principle applies to our lives. Some victories, dreams, or revelations must remain confidential to protect their potential and their purpose. Confidentiality allows for focus and preparation. When we share too much too soon, we invite distraction, unsolicited advice, and sometimes even opposition. People may impose their own agendas, fears, or biases onto your vision, causing confusion and slowing your progress. But when we exercise confidentiality, we create a space to nurture our goals, refine our plans, and grow spiritually without outside interference. It's the quiet, unseen work that often produces the greatest results. Craig Groeschel often emphasizes that leadership and spiritual growth are rarely about what is visible immediately. They are cultivated in the background in discipline, prayer, and preparation. The blessing of confidentiality gives us that space to mature and to align ourselves fully with God's timing and direction. Confidentiality also strengthens relationships. Trust is built when people know you can be relied upon to keep sensitive information private. Leaders who maintain confidentiality are respected because they demonstrate integrity and wisdom. Friends, colleagues, and even family members are more likely to confide in you when they know that what they share will not be casually disclosed. In spiritual terms, this is critical because God often entrusts certain revelations, burdens, or assignments to individuals with the expectation that they will handle them faithfully. Being a trustworthy steward of confidential information is a reflection of character and faithfulness. People who respect the power of confidentiality are often given greater responsibility and access because they are seen as reliable and mature. The blessing of confidentiality is also deeply connected to humility. In a culture where recognition is often equated with success, keeping certain achievements or insights private requires humility and a long-term perspective. Humility allows you to rejoice in what God is doing without the need for validation from the world. It teaches us to find contentment in God's approval rather than human praise. Many people fall into the trap of broadcasting accomplishments for attention or validation, only to discover that external approval is fleeting. The person who practices confidentiality finds joy and satisfaction in God's affirmation alone, knowing that what truly matters is alignment with His purposes, not the applause of others. Confidentiality is also a protective measure. Sharing too much can make you vulnerable to envy, criticism, or sabotage. There will always be individuals who do not wish to see you succeed, who misinterpret your intentions, or who act out of fear or jealousy. By maintaining confidentiality, you shield your ideas, dreams, and spiritual assignments from those who might attempt to undermine them. This is not about fear or suspicion. It is about stewardship. Just as Joseph's dreams were carefully revealed at the right time, some aspects of your life require discretion to ensure they reach their full potential without unnecessary interference. Another aspect of confidentiality is the preservation of your spiritual power. Some spiritual breakthroughs, prayers, or revelations are potent precisely because they are private. When shared indiscriminately, they can lose focus, momentum, or impact. God often works most powerfully in the unseen, private moments. The private prayers you pray, the personal sacrifices you make, and the secret acts of faith you perform are noticed by God, even if no one else witnesses them. There is a blessing in keeping certain spiritual experiences confidential because it deepens intimacy with God and nurtures a faith that is rooted in Him rather than in external affirmation. Confidentiality also teaches patience and strategic timing. It forces you to consider when, how, and with whom certain information should be shared. Many people are tempted to reveal their progress, insights, or plans prematurely, thinking that immediate recognition or feedback is necessary. Yet timing is everything. Craig Groeschel often emphasizes that success and fulfillment are rarely instantaneous. They require preparation, perseverance, and divine timing. When you maintain confidentiality, you are practicing strategic patience, allowing God's plan to unfold at the right moment for maximum impact. It is a discipline that ensures your words and actions have the most influence when revealed, rather than being diluted by haste. Moreover, confidentiality allows you to grow without comparison. When you share your journey too publicly, it is easy to compare your progress with others or to measure your worth based on public response. By keeping certain aspects private, you focus on God's plan and pace rather than the opinions or achievements of others. This protects your heart from envy, discouragement, and distraction. You learn to value progress, obedience, and growth over recognition, which is a deeper, more sustainable form of success. The blessing of confidentiality is that it shifts the focus from outward validation to inward alignment with God's purpose. Confidentiality also encourages discernment. Deciding what to share, when to share it, and with whom requires wisdom and careful thought. It is a spiritual and practical exercise in judgment, helping you distinguish between those who genuinely need to know and those who do not. Discernment is a hallmark of mature leadership and faith. When you exercise confidentiality with discernment, you gain credibility, respect, and authority. People recognize that you are not reactive, that you think before you act, and that you value the weight of your words and information, another powerful aspect of confidentiality is its connection to perseverance. Often, the work that produces the greatest results begins quietly and unnoticed. Many people abandon their efforts too early because they seek validation or recognition before the results are tangible. By practicing confidentiality, you learn to persevere in silence, trusting that God sees your efforts and will reveal the results at the appropriate time. This mindset protects you from discouragement, fosters resilience, and develops the discipline to continue faithfully even when progress is not publicly acknowledged. Confidentiality also cultivates influence. People are drawn to individuals who operate with discretion, wisdom, and integrity. There is a sense of gravitas and credibility in those who do not feel compelled to share everything. They are seen as thoughtful, reliable, and mature. Leaders, mentors, and influencers who maintain confidentiality often have greater sway because their words are measured, their advice is trusted, and their actions are respected. Influence is built not only through what you do, but also through what you wisely choose not to reveal. In practical terms, confidentiality can manifest in several ways. It might mean keeping your personal struggles private, sharing them only with God and a trusted confidant. It might mean holding back certain victories until you have completed the work God has called you to do. It might mean exercising restraint in conversations, social media, or professional settings, carefully considering the impact of what you reveal. Each choice to maintain confidentiality is a deliberate act of stewardship, ensuring that your life, vision, and spiritual calling are protected and preserved. Confidentiality is also an exercise in trust, trusting that God's timing is perfect and that His plan does not require immediate exposure, allows you to operate with calm confidence. You do not need to broadcast your journey to validate it. You do not need immediate recognition to confirm your progress. By practicing confidentiality, you cultivate a deep-seated trust in God in your process and in the unseen work of faith. This trust becomes a stabilizing force, allowing you to move forward with conviction, even when the world is unaware of your efforts. Finally, the blessing of confidentiality is ultimately about honoring God. It is an acknowledgement that some things belong to Him first, and they are entrusted to you not for public consumption, but for faithful stewardship. When you exercise confidentiality, you demonstrate obedience, wisdom, and reverence. You create space for God to act in ways that surpass human understanding. Just as Esther waited for the right moment to reveal her plans, just as Joseph's dreams unfolded in God's timing, your commitment to confidentiality positions your life for blessing, protection, and impact. One of the most critical principles for living a life of purpose and fulfilling God's calling is understanding the danger of premature exposure. In a world that celebrates instant sharing, public recognition, and immediate gratification, it is easy to assume that revealing every step of your journey will accelerate your progress or validate your efforts. The truth, however, is that premature exposure can be one of the most damaging choices a person can make. It can derail vision, create unnecessary opposition, invite distraction, and undermine the very work God has called you to do. Avoiding premature exposure is not about fear, secrecy, or hiding your light. It is about stewardship, wisdom, patience, and strategic timing. Premature exposure can take many forms. It could be sharing a vision before it has been fully formed, announcing a goal before it is ready for implementation, or discussing a personal breakthrough before the appropriate time. It can occur in social media posts, casual conversations, professional settings, or even within close relationships. The danger is not in sharing itself, but in sharing too soon, before the vision has matured, before the foundation has been laid, and before you are prepared to handle the consequences of exposure. Craig Groeschel often emphasizes that timing is essential in God's plan. When you reveal too early, you risk misalignment with God's timing, which can hinder your progress and dilute your impact. Avoiding premature exposure requires discernment. Discernment is the ability to distinguish between what is ready to be shared and what must remain private. It is the capacity to evaluate whether revealing information now will strengthen or weaken your position, whether it will serve your purpose or distract from it. Discernment often comes from experienced prayer and a willingness to listen to God's guidance rather than human impulses. Without discernment, the temptation to seek validation, attention, or approval can override wisdom, leading to exposure that diminishes rather than enhances your influence and progress. Premature exposure can also create unnecessary opposition. Not everyone will understand your vision or your journey, and sharing too soon can draw criticism, envy, or interference. When people see something they do not fully comprehend, their default reaction may be skepticism or doubt. Even well-meaning individuals can unintentionally discourage, misguide, or divert your attention from the path God has set for you. By avoiding premature exposure, you protect your vision from these external pressures, allowing it to develop in alignment with God's timing and purpose. You create a buffer between your progress and potential disruption, giving your ideas, plans, and breakthroughs the space to grow unchallenged until the right moment for revelation. Another dimension of avoiding premature exposure is protecting your credibility. When you announce plans or share insights before they are fully formed or ready to implement, there is a risk of failure that can damage your reputation. People may judge you based on incomplete results, misunderstanding your intentions or the complexity of your efforts. By waiting until the time is right, you can ensure that when your vision is revealed, it reflects your preparation, competence, and the guidance of God rather than the vulnerability of being unready. This strategic patience builds credibility and authority because others see that you are thoughtful, deliberate, and aligned with purpose rather than impulsive or reactive. Avoiding premature exposure also strengthens personal growth and resilience. Many of the lessons, skills, and character traits necessary for success are developed in private through trial, effort, and prayer. Sharing your progress too early often invites shortcuts, pressure, or expectations that can disrupt this natural growth process. When you allow your vision and your skills to mature quietly, you cultivate resilience, the ability to withstand setbacks, criticism, and challenges. You develop the internal fortitude to pursue God's calling regardless of external recognition, and you learn to rely on His timing rather than human validation. Spiritual maturity is another key reason to avoid premature exposure. God often works in the unseen, in quiet preparation, and in private development. Just as Jesus spent years in preparation before His public ministry, many of God's plans require incubation before they can be revealed effectively. Premature exposure can short-circuit spiritual preparation by inviting attention, distraction, or temptation before you are fully ready. When you wait, you allow God to refine your character, clarify your vision, and provide the resources and wisdom necessary for successful implementation. Spiritual growth thrives in the private, disciplined space where exposure is limited and faith is strengthened through reliance on God rather than public affirmation. Avoiding premature exposure also preserves the element of influence. Timing and context matter greatly when it comes to impact. When something is revealed too early, it may not be fully appreciated or understood. People may dismiss, underestimate, or misinterpret your work. even when the underlying vision is brilliant. By waiting until the right moment, you maximize the potential for influence and ensure that your efforts are received with clarity, respect, and alignment. Strategic timing enhances both the credibility of your message and the effectiveness of your actions, allowing your work to achieve its maximum potential impact. Premature exposure can also undermine relationships. When you share your progress, plans, or insights too soon, it can unintentionally create tension, competition, or resentment. Others may feel pressured, insecure, or unprepared for the implications of your vision. By exercising restraint, you protect relationships and maintain harmony while continuing to pursue your goals. This does not mean isolating yourself. It means managing communication carefully, sharing only with those whose involvement is necessary, timely, and beneficial. Craig Groeschel often speaks about the importance of relational intelligence in leadership, and avoiding premature exposure is a key part of managing relationships with wisdom and grace. Self-control is essential in this discipline. The temptation to seek validation, recognition, or applause is strong. Social media, peer influence, and cultural norms often encourage immediate disclosure of progress, ideas, and successes. Exercising self-control means resisting that temptation, understanding that delayed revelation is a sign of wisdom rather than insecurity. It requires maturity to recognize that your time, your work, and your story belong first to God, and that strategic patience will ultimately produce more fruit than immediate exposure. Self-control allows you to safeguard your vision, protect your relationships, and honor God through intentionality and restraint. Avoiding premature exposure also fosters trust with God. Each moment you choose discretion over impulsivity demonstrates reliance on His wisdom and timing. You acknowledge that His plan is greater than your urgency and that His guidance is more accurate than human opinion. This trust cultivates deeper faith, perseverance, and alignment with His purpose. It also creates an atmosphere where God can move powerfully and unexpectedly, often in ways that human planning cannot anticipate. By respecting the timing of revelation, you position yourself to experience outcomes that are far greater than anything you could have orchestrated on your own. Strategic timing is critical because it allows your work, vision, or breakthrough to be fully equipped before facing public scrutiny. It ensures that your ideas are complete, your execution is prepared, and your influence is at its peak. When you reveal too soon, you risk partial results, misunderstandings, or setbacks that could have been avoided. By waiting and cultivating readiness, you honor both your vision and those who will be impacted by it, ensuring that the outcome reflects excellence, preparation, and divine alignment rather than premature enthusiasm or incomplete effort. Avoiding premature exposure also develops humility. It requires you to release the need for immediate recognition and approval. Humility allows you to acknowledge that the ultimate validation comes from God, not from public acknowledgement. It cultivates patience, restraint, and a deeper understanding that timing, alignment, and preparation are far more important than speed. Humility in this context is not weakness. It is strength disguised as restraint. It is the recognition that God's plan is bigger than your desire to share, and that careful preparation and discretion produce more lasting impact than impulsive revelation. Confidentiality and protection of your vision go hand in hand with avoiding premature exposure. Keeping certain aspects of your life, work, or calling private ensures that they are not diluted, misunderstood, or compromised. It allows for thoughtful refinement and growth, fostering spiritual, emotional, and relational maturity. Every moment of strategic restraint is an investment in long-term success, influence, and faithfulness. The blessings that emerge from patient preparation often surpass anything that could have been gained through premature sharing. Avoiding premature exposure is also about legacy. The way you handle information, timing, and disclosure shapes the influence you have on others and the effectiveness of your work. Those who reveal too early often face setbacks that could have been prevented with patience and discretion. Those who master strategic timing are able to impact lives, communities, and even generations in ways that immediate disclosure could not achieve. The discipline of restraint ensures that when your work is revealed, it is not only received with clarity and respect, but also positions you for long-term influence and effectiveness. The principle of avoiding premature exposure is ultimately about alignment with God's timing. It requires discernment, self-control, patience, humility, spiritual maturity, and trust in His plan. It is about understanding that not everything is meant to be public immediately, and that some breakthroughs, victories, and visions are too powerful to be revealed before their season. By exercising strategic restraint, you allow your work, your faith, and your calling to develop fully, ensuring that when it is revealed, it achieves maximum impact, influence, and fulfillment. Guarding your heart and your relationships is one of the most crucial, yet often neglected disciplines in life. In a world that constantly seeks to influence us, distract us, or pull us in directions that are not aligned with God's purpose, protecting your heart becomes essential for both personal growth and spiritual maturity. Craig Groeschel often emphasizes that your heart is the wellspring of your life, and if it is not guarded, everything you do, your decisions, your vision, your relationships can be compromised. Guarding your heart is not about building walls or isolating yourself from the world. It is about cultivating discernment, establishing boundaries, and nurturing relationships that reflect God's principles and bring out the best in you. The heart is more than emotions or feelings. It is the center of who you are, the source of your motivations, and the lens through which you view the world. Proverbs 4:23 says, "Above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it." This verse emphasizes the centrality of the heart in determining the trajectory of your life. If your heart is exposed to negativity, toxicity, or influences that are not aligned with God's will, your decisions, actions, and vision can be compromised. Guarding your heart begins with awareness of what enters it, what you allow to occupy your mind, the words you hear, the relationships you engage with, and the media or messages you consume. Each of these can have a profound impact on the condition of your heart and the quality of your life. Guarding your heart also involves discernment in relationships. Not every person who enters your life is meant to influence your journey positively. Some relationships may be filled with hidden agendas, subtle criticism, or draining negativity. Others may bring temporary comfort, but do not contribute to your long-term growth or alignment with God's plan. Learning to recognize which relationships to nurture, which to limit, and which to distance yourself from is a critical aspect of guarding your heart. This does not mean judging harshly or cutting off those who are struggling. It means exercising wisdom in how much influence, time, and energy you invest in each relationship. Craig Groeschel often reminds us that leadership and influence require relational intelligence, and guarding your heart is an essential part of developing that intelligence. Boundaries are a practical tool in guarding your heart and relationships. Healthy boundaries help protect you from unnecessary emotional drain, manipulation, or interference. They define what you will and will not accept in your interactions and help create space for healthy, mutually beneficial connections. Boundaries are not selfish, they are a form of self-respect and stewardship. When you establish boundaries, you communicate to others that you value your heart, your vision, and your spiritual well-being. You also protect the people around you by fostering interactions that are honest, clear, and rooted in mutual respect. Boundaries allow your relationships to thrive because they prevent resentment, burnout, and the erosion of trust. Guarding your heart is closely tied to emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence is the ability to recognize, understand, and manage your own emotions while navigating the emotions of others. When you guard your heart, you prevent reactive behaviors that can damage relationships. You gain the ability to respond rather than react, to speak truth with grace, and to listen with empathy. Emotional self-regulation is critical because unchecked emotions often lead to conflict, misunderstandings, and broken trust. The person who guards their heart is not emotionally detached. They are emotionally aware, intentional, and guided by principle rather than impulse. Trust is a central component of relationships, and guarding your heart ensures that trust is built on a solid foundation. When you share too much too soon, or with the wrong people, you risk exposing your vulnerabilities in ways that can be exploited or misunderstood. Guarding your heart allows you to discern whom to confide in and when. It ensures that intimacy, vulnerability, and shared experiences are offered wisely and to those who will honor them. Relationships built on trust, discretion, and integrity are far stronger and more enduring than those formed without careful consideration. Spiritual maturity is deeply connected to guarding your heart. The heart is the battlefield for many spiritual struggles, including temptation, pride, jealousy, and bitterness. Allowing your heart to be influenced by unhealthy relationships or negative environments can compromise your spiritual growth. By guarding your heart, you create a protective filter that allows God's truth, guidance, and presence to shape your thoughts, desires, and actions. Spiritual disciplines such as prayer, meditation, and studying scripture fortify your heart, helping you discern God's voice and resist influences that are contrary to His will. The person who guards their heart is not isolated from the world. They are empowered to engage with it in a way that honors God and protects their spiritual integrity. Guarding your heart also helps in managing conflict. Conflict is inevitable in life, whether in personal relationships, professional settings, or community involvement. However, a guarded heart approaches conflict differently. It seeks resolution rather than escalation, understands perspective before judgment, and prioritizes the preservation of relationships over winning an argument. By maintaining control over your emotional and spiritual center, you can navigate disagreements with wisdom and grace. This approach not only strengthens the relationship, but also enhances your credibility and influence. Another key aspect of guarding your heart is protecting your vision. Just as premature exposure can undermine a vision, unhealthy relationships or unchecked emotional attachments can derail your purpose. People can unintentionally impose their fears, doubts, or limitations onto your life, influencing decisions and actions that are not aligned with God's calling. Guarding your heart ensures that you remain centered on your purpose, guided by wisdom, and focused on the path God has laid out for you. Relationships should complement and support your vision, not compromise or distort it. Guarding your heart also requires intentional reflection. It involves regularly evaluating your thoughts, emotions, and relational dynamics to ensure alignment with God's principles. Self-examination helps identify areas where you may be vulnerable, reactive, or overly influenced by others. It allows you to course correct, establish new boundaries, and engage in relationships from a place of strength and clarity. Craig Groeschel often emphasizes the importance of self-awareness in leadership And the same principle applies to personal and relational health. Regular reflection strengthens your heart, ensuring it remains resilient, focused, and aligned with God's calling. The discipline of guarding your heart is also a practice of patience. Relationships require time to develop trust, understanding, and intimacy. The heart cannot be rushed into vulnerability without risking harm or disappointment. By exercising patience, you allow relationships to mature naturally, ensuring that trust is earned and boundaries are respected. Patience also extends to your interactions with others, allowing you to respond thoughtfully rather than react impulsively, which fosters deeper connections and long-lasting relationships. Guarding your heart is intertwined with integrity. Integrity is the alignment of your actions, thoughts, and words with your values and principles. When you protect your heart, you are less likely to compromise your values under pressure or influence from others. Integrity ensures that your relationships are built on authenticity, honesty, and respect. People are drawn to those who demonstrate consistent character and discernment, and guarding your heart is a vital component of maintaining that consistency. Another significant dimension of guarding your heart is resilience. Life will inevitably present challenges, disappointments, and betrayals. A heart that is unprotected is easily wounded, leaving you vulnerable to bitterness, discouragement, or distrust. Guarding your heart strengthens resilience by equipping you to respond to adversity with faith, wisdom, and perspective. It allows you to recover from setbacks without allowing them to derail your emotional, spiritual, or relational well-being. Resilience cultivated through a guarded heart fosters a life of stability, influence, and enduring impact. Guarding your heart and relationships also cultivates empathy and compassion. When you understand the importance of protecting your own heart, you become more sensitive to the hearts of others. You learn to engage with empathy, respect boundaries, and honor the vulnerabilities of those around you. This approach enhances communication, strengthens bonds, and fosters a culture of care and understanding in both personal and professional relationships. Empathy becomes a natural byproduct of a disciplined, protected heart. Finally, guarding your heart is ultimately about stewardship. God has entrusted you with your life, your emotions, your thoughts, and your relationships. Protecting these sacred resources ensures that they are used wisely, aligned with His purpose, and capable of producing maximum impact. Guarding your heart allows you to thrive personally, spiritually, and relationally. It empowers you to engage with the world from a position of strength, wisdom, and integrity, ensuring that your life and relationships reflect the fullness of God's blessing. Faith is often described as the confident assurance of what we hope for and the conviction of what we do not see. Yet, for many, faith is fragile, wavering under pressure, uncertainty, or disappointment. The secret that strengthens faith is not merely wishing or hoping for the best. It is a discipline, a mindset, and a relationship with God that grows deeper through intentional practice, trust, and obedience. Faith is strengthened when it is tested, refined, and exercised in the context of real life. But there are specific spiritual and practical practices that act as a catalyst for this growth. Craig Groeschel often emphasizes that faith is not passive, it is active, requiring choices, actions, and a willingness to trust God in ways that are visible and tangible even before the results appear. The first aspect of strengthening faith is consistency. Faith grows strongest in those who choose to remain consistent in their trust and practice, even when circumstances suggest doubt or fear. Consistency is not blind optimism, it is deliberate obedience to God's word, prayer, and spiritual disciplines regardless of how the situation looks externally. Many people allow their faith to be dictated by circumstances they believe when life is smooth and falter, when challenges arise. Strengthened faith is cultivated by making the choice to trust God every day, in small and large matters alike, even when the outcome is uncertain. This consistency becomes a rhythm that trains the heart to rely on God's promises rather than fleeting emotions or changing circumstances. Faith is also strengthened through endurance. Life inevitably brings trials, challenges, and setbacks that test our trust in God. Endurance is the ability to remain steadfast in faith despite difficulty, to persevere when the natural response is doubt or despair. Craig Groeschel frequently highlights that trials are not interruptions of God's plan. They are often the laboratory in which faith is refined. Endurance builds confidence because each time you rely on God in the face of adversity, you prove to yourself that His promises are trustworthy. Over time, repeated acts of endurance create a faith that is resilient, unshakable, and deeply rooted in experience rather than theory. Another critical element in strengthening faith is obedience. Faith grows when we act on what we believe, even when we do not yet see the full outcome. Obedience transforms faith from a concept into a lived reality. It is easy to claim belief in God's promises in theory, but it is obedience that demonstrates trust. Each step taken in obedience, whether in generosity, service, ethical decision-making, or spiritual discipline, reinforces the conviction that God is faithful. Obedience also opens doors for God to demonstrate His power, timing, and provision. When faith is coupled with action, it moves from being passive hope to active partnership with God, creating opportunities for miracles, breakthroughs, and growth. Prayer is another powerful secret for strengthening faith. Prayer is not only about asking for guidance or provision, it is an ongoing conversation with God that deepens trust, reliance, and intimacy. Craig Groeschel often emphasizes that prayer changes the one who prays as much as it influences circumstances. Through prayer, you express dependence on God, clarify your alignment with His will, and cultivate sensitivity to His guidance. Faith strengthens in the context of persistent, intentional prayer because it continually reminds the heart that God is present, sovereign, and faithful. Prayer transforms fear into trust and doubt into confidence by anchoring the heart in the reality of God's character rather than temporary situations. Faith is also strengthened by reflection on past victories. Remembering the ways God has acted in your life or in the lives of others reinforces the conviction that He is consistent and faithful. Many people forget previous instances of divine provision or guidance, allowing discouragement to take root in the face of new challenges. By regularly reflecting on past experiences where God has fulfilled promises, answered prayers, or provided in unexpected ways, you reinforce the mental and emotional framework necessary for unwavering faith. This reflection creates a reservoir of trust that can sustain you through seasons of uncertainty. Another secret to strengthening faith is community. Faith thrives in connection with others who encourage, challenge, and support you in your spiritual journey. Isolation can make faith fragile because it removes the reinforcement, wisdom, and accountability that a community provides. Craig Groeschel emphasizes the power of a faith-filled community in cultivating courage, resilience, and perspective. When you share your journey with others, receive mentorship, or engage in corporate prayer and study, your faith is bolstered by collective experience and shared wisdom. Community acts as both a mirror and a support system, reflecting God's truth and helping to stabilize your trust in His promises. Faith is strengthened by surrender, the deliberate act of letting go of control and trusting God with outcomes. Many people struggle with faith because they attempt to manipulate results, control circumstances, or rely on their own understanding. Surrender does not mean passivity. It means choosing to align your will with God's, acknowledging that His perspective is greater and His timing perfect. Surrender strengthens faith because it releases the weight of worry, fear, and anxiety, creating space for God's power and intervention. The act of letting go is a daily discipline requiring humility and trust, but it yields a faith that is deep, resilient, and anchored in the character of God rather than external circumstances. Faith is also reinforced through expectation. Expectation does not mean unrealistic optimism. It means cultivating the belief that God will act in ways that honor His promises. Expectation shapes perception and behavior because it encourages proactive alignment with God's plan rather than passive waiting. When you expect God to provide, guide, or act, you are more likely to notice opportunities, respond with courage, and persevere through challenges. Craig Groeschel often notes that faith involves both trust and anticipation, the combination of confidence in God and openness to His activity. Expectation fuels action, endurance, and vision, creating a fertile environment for faith to flourish. The study of Scripture is another essential practice for strengthening faith. God's Word is full of promises, examples, and testimonies of His faithfulness. By immersing yourself in Scripture, you reinforce the mental and spiritual foundation of belief. You internalize God's character, His principles, and His promises, equipping your heart and mind to respond with trust rather than fear. The stories of Abraham, Joseph, Moses, and the apostles illustrate the power of persistent faith in the face of uncertainty. When you study these examples, faith is strengthened because you see how God's principles have stood the test of time, offering a blueprint for navigating your own journey. Faith grows through gratitude as well. Recognizing God's blessings, both large and small, trains your heart to focus on what is true, reliable, and positive rather than on fear, doubt, or scarcity. Gratitude strengthens faith because it shifts your perspective from what is missing to what has already been provided. Craig Groeschel often emphasizes that a heart of gratitude fosters contentment, joy, and resilience, all of which are critical for sustaining faith in challenging times. By actively cultivating gratitude, you reinforce the truth that God is present, faithful, and working in every situation, even when it is not immediately visible. Testing and challenge also play a key role in strengthening faith. Faith that has never been tested is theoretical, but faith that is exercised under pressure becomes resilient and proven. God often allows challenges to refine trust, develop patience, and increase reliance on Him. Every time you step forward despite fear, uncertainty, or difficulty, you strengthen the muscles of faith. This process is not easy, but it is transformative. Craig Groeschel frequently emphasizes that growth often comes in discomfort, and faith deepens most profoundly when it is stretched, challenged, and exercised intentionally. Faith is strengthened through the discipline of waiting. Waiting is active, not passive. It is a posture of trust, patience, and alignment with God's timing. Waiting tests resolve, teaches perseverance, and cultivates expectation. Many people give up prematurely because they misunderstand waiting as inactivity or delay. In reality, waiting strengthens faith because it is a period of preparation, reflection, and spiritual alignment. During this time, God develops character, builds resilience, and positions you for greater impact. The secret of strengthened faith is learning to wait while remaining active in prayer, obedience, and alignment with His will. Finally, faith is strengthened when it is anchored in God's character rather than circumstances. Circumstances are temporary, unpredictable, and often beyond your control. God's character is eternal, consistent, and reliable. When your faith is rooted in who God is, His goodness, wisdom, and faithfulness, you are not shaken by setbacks, delays, or opposition. Anchoring faith in God rather than results ensures that it grows deeper over time, producing courage, perseverance, and confidence that cannot be undermined by external events. Craig Groeschel often reminds us that faith is less about believing in outcomes and more about trusting in God Himself. The secret to strengthen faith is this unwavering focus on the one who is constant, even when everything else seems uncertain. As we reflect on these 7 powerful secrets, it becomes clear that there is a sacred rhythm to life that God calls us to embrace, a rhythm of discernment, patience, and intentionality. Each secret we've explored, from the discipline of self-control to the blessing of confidentiality, from avoiding premature exposure to guarding your heart and relationships, and finally, to cultivating faith, reveals a deeper principle. What we choose to keep private shapes who we are, what we accomplish, and how God can move in our lives. Life in a culture of oversharing often tempts us to seek validation from the world, yet God's wisdom reminds us that timing, restraint, and discretion are not limitations. They are powerful tools for living a life of impact. Keeping certain things private protects your heart, your vision, and your relationships. It gives you the space to grow without distraction, to refine your ideas before sharing them, and to allow God's timing to orchestrate outcomes far greater than you could imagine. Privacy is not secrecy for its own sake. It is stewardship of your potential, character, and calling. It ensures that when your words, actions, or breakthroughs are revealed, they carry the weight, influence, and integrity that God intends. Each act of restraint is an investment in your future, a seed planted that will yield fruit in its proper season. Discipline, self-control, and confidentiality are not just personal practices, they are spiritual disciplines that align your life with God's purposes. They empower you to navigate relationships with wisdom, to respond with intention rather than reaction, and to cultivate trust and influence in ways that endure. Avoiding premature exposure allows your dreams, plans, and spiritual assignments to mature fully, protecting them from opposition, misunderstanding, or distraction. Guarding your heart ensures that your emotional and spiritual well-being is preserved, equipping you to love, lead, and serve from a place of strength and integrity. Faith is the thread that weaves through all of these secrets. It is the invisible force that sustains you in waiting, strengthens you in discipline, and anchors you when the world demands immediate action or approval. Faith allows you to trust God's timing, to act with courage, and to persevere even when the outcomes are unseen. It transforms private disciplines into powerful testimonies of God's work in your life. The stronger your faith, the more effectively you can steward the things God has entrusted to you, and the greater the impact you can have on others. Living these principles is not always easy. It requires courage to say no when the world says yes, patience to wait when others rush, and humility to trust when others seek immediate recognition. But the reward is far greater than temporary comfort or applause. By embracing the power of privacy, you are positioning yourself for clarity, growth, and divine favor. You are creating the conditions for lasting influence, strong relationships, and a life aligned with purpose rather than impulse. In a culture that rewards oversharing, God calls us to a countercultural path, a path where restraint is strength, silence is power, and privacy is a tool for stewardship. As you apply these 7 secrets in your life, self-control, confidentiality, avoiding premature exposure, guarding your heart, and strengthening your faith, you will discover that what is kept private is not hidden from God. It is treasured, refined, and prepared to accomplish far more than you could accomplish through exposure or haste. The ultimate secret is this: when you steward your life wisely, you honor God, protect your destiny, and position yourself to live a life of impact, influence, and faithfulness that lasts far beyond what the eye can see.